What is going on, guys? Welcome back. In this video today, we're going to talk about skills in the context of AI agents. Now, skills have been around for a while, so it's not the newest concept out there, but some of you guys might still not know what skills are and how to use them and also why to use them. So today we're going to cover that. We're going to compare them to something like agents.md files. We're going to talk about the differences, and spoiler alert, it's very simple. Skills are basically just markdown files. There's nothing fancy about them, but they can help your agent in a different way than something like agents or Claude.md files. If you like this video, let me know by hitting the like button and subscribing, but now let us get right into it.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.
Alright, so as I already mentioned in the introduction, skills are extremely trivial. They're super easy to understand because they're basically just markdown files in folders, and then you can also have multiple markdown files. You can have multiple extra files surrounding these markdown files, but at the end of the day, it's just text that you give to the model as context. Now, let us jump right into it with an example so I can show you what skills are about. But first of all, let's talk about the difference between skills and Claude.md files or agents.md files. So the idea is if I have here now in my tutorial directory a project, let's call it test project 1, I can go into that project and I can initialize it, for example, with UV. It's going to be a UV Python project here, and I might want to do some stuff. Now, if I want to work with an agent here, I can just do that by using Claude Code or by using Open Code or something like this. But if I want to give specific context to this particular project, I can do that with a special agents.md file or Claude.md file, and there's also different variants of that. But the idea is I create something like agents.md, and here I put instructions like, I don't know, how to style the code, and then I provide some examples, or I can say tech stack or something like this. So I could say that this is a Flask application with a, I don't know, SQL Alchemy or M connecting to Postgres, whatever. Like, I can just provide some general instructions, and what's going to happen is that this file is always going to be loaded into context so that the agent knows what to do. The agent has some base information about the project, and that's basically it. Now, what we also know, however, is that agents or models are limited in terms of how much context they can process. So if I have a huge agents.md file with tons of information, with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of tokens, that is going to degrade the performance of my model because then it cannot use that context to focus on the actual coding. So general information makes sense to put in something like an agents.md file, but sometimes I have some information like how to add a Python package in my project, how to run the Docker containers associated with this project, how do I want to work with different parts or different tooling that I have on my system. And for these, we use skills. The idea of a skill is that it's separate, so it's its own markdown file, its own directory with related files, and not just a central MD file for all the different skills. So the idea is, for example, if I want to use Claude Code, I would create a directory called .claude, and then in this directory, I would create another directory called skills, and then in this directory, I create the directories that are my skills. So I can go into this one, and I can say make directory, and I could call this Python package installation, for example. Now, before we do that, however, let me show you what the agent would do without any skill for Python package installation. Let's say what I want to do is I have this UV setup. If I want to add a new package, I want to do UV add. And then let's say for some compatibility reason, I also want to pip freeze the entire packages, so all the packages with the versions, into a requirements.txt file. So the order would be something like UV add numpy, and then once I have done this, I would do something like UV Python freeze and feed this into a requirements txt file. That would be the process that I want to follow for whatever reason. This is just how I want to do it in my project, and I don't want to specify that every single time I do that. Now, of course, I can put stuff like this into the agents.md file, and I can do that if I only have like 2-3 things that I want the agent to know about. But if I have like hundreds of different things to do in a special way, it gets a little bit too much for the context window. So let's go and say Claude to open Claude Code, and let's tell it to install numpy. Now, probably it's going to recognize that we're using UV here, so it's not going to just do pip install, it's going to actually use UV, but it's not going to do the requirements.txt step. And maybe it's not even going to use UV. Actually, it does, because it recognizes that there's a PyProject Tom. So there you go, it says UV add numpy, I can say yes, proceed, and then it's going to say I added to the project, that's it. There you go. So now what I want to do is I want to create a skill that will also do this additional step every single time of freezing the packages with the versions to a requirements.txt file. So I'm going to go back into Claude skills, and I'm going to create here Python package installation as a skill. And basically for a skill, I just need to create a directory. And in this directory, I need to create a file called SKILL.md. So I need to say skill in capital letters .md. And now I have this signature at the very top, which always has to be the same. So I have 3 hyphens or 3 dashes, name, description, and then again 3 dashes. And then down here I can put whatever I want. So the name of the skill has to be Python package installation, and then the description basically tells the agent what this skill is about. So I can say installing Python packages the right way, or something like this. And the idea now is that I can put a bunch of stuff here, just random text, whatever. I can make this very long. But the idea is that when the agent gets a task, what the agent does is it looks through all the skills and basically just looks at name and description. So it sees, for example, if I tell it add pandas to my package, it will go through all the skills I have and it will see maybe something like how to design the code, or something like, I don't know, how to use Docker. And it's going to ignore those because those are not relevant. And then it's going to see here Python package installation, installing Python packages the right way. It will see only that, not the rest of the file. It will say, okay, this is relevant to what I'm doing right now. Let me load that skill. It will then load this text as context. So it will then only read the full skill. And here I can specify something simple like how to properly install Python packages in this project. And then I'm going to keep it simple. Of course, you can make this very fancy, but I'm going to just say always use uv add, not pip install, to add packages. After that, always run uv, and then what was it? Python freeze requirements txt for compatibility reasons, whatever. It doesn't even make sense. Like the thing that we're doing here isn't as important. It's more important that we see that it now does that automatically. So I'm now back in the project. I'm going to start a new Claude Code instance, and I'm going to tell it to install pandas. So what's going to happen now, and you're going to actually see this here, is the skill is loaded. You can see skill Python package installation was recognized as a useful skill. It was loaded, and now it does uv add pandas, same as before. And now it's going to do the pip freeze step as well, just because it's written in the skill and it loaded that skill as context. You can see uv pip freeze requirements txt. Now, even though the structure is specific to Claude Code, we can also use it with OpenCode. Now, I'm not sure if it works with Codex, probably yes. Otherwise, you just have to use a different directory name. But we can go and start an OpenCode instance. Maybe before we do that, let's remove the requirements txt file because maybe it already spoils the surprise a little bit. Let's run an OpenCode instance here. And let's say that we want to add another package. So I'm going to say here, add the, let's say, Y-Finance package to the project. So by doing this, again, we have the session. It's going to hopefully load the skill. So in this case, it seems like it didn't load the skill directly. Let me check that, because if it didn't do that, we can also try something else, which is interesting. Sometimes it will find the skill, sometimes not. But if it doesn't find the skill, for example, right here it says git status. This is not what I want to do, so let's reject that. But basically what I can do now is I can say /skills, and I can see what skills I have available. You can see I actually have this Python package installation skill here. So it does recognize that it exists. But what I can also do now is I can force the skill to be used. So I can say Python package installation. I can either type it out myself, or I can go to /skills and just select it. It will do the same thing, / and then the skill name. And then I can say add scikit-learn, for example. And you can see that it loads this skill now as context, as text basically, and then it will use this as the instruction. If I want to force the skill usage, I can do it like this, but oftentimes the agent is smart enough to realize that this skill is relevant now and uses it. So there you go. Now we can see uv add sklearn and uv python freeze. And it actually made a mistake because it called it sklearn and not scikit-learn, but that's on OpenAI for having such a stupid model. So you can see the basic idea of a skill. This is now a very minimal example. This is not very sophisticated, just a basic hello world type of example. But the cool thing is now we can add a bunch of different skills. And if you don't want to write all of these yourself, you can also go to GitHub repositories that already have skills. So for example, here in the browser now, I have the Anthropic skill repository and the OpenAI skill repository. Basically, we just have a bunch of skills here. You can go into this skills direction, and then you can see some of the skills that they offer here. You also have the same thing for OpenAI here. You just go to something like curated, for example, and you can see a bunch of skills. And if you look into them, like for example, if I go to something like PDF, you can see that it's a SKILL.md file with some text, usually quite a lot of text with examples and formatting and everything. So this is like best practice. You want to write your skills like this, not the way I did, in a very minimal way. And then you also have files surrounding this one. So you have Forms.md, for example, which is loaded on demand. You can put into SKILLS.md or into SKILL.md, you can put the guidelines when to look into specific files. You can say something like, if this and this is the case, then look into this Forms.md file. And then you also have scripts, for example. So here we have actually scripts that the program, that the agent can run. Now, I didn't look into this script in particular, but basically you have these tools here that belong to the skill. So if the agent decides that based on the markdown file, it should do something and it doesn't want to implement it from scratch, you can tell it, here are some tools that you can use, just run Python, and then the file name, and it's going to use that skill or this tool. Now, one skill that I want to show you here is the skill creator. This is an interesting one because basically what it does is it allows you to create skills with the agent itself. So we can actually go here to the main repository. I'm going to go and take the SSH path here. I'm going to end open code. I'm going to get out of this project, and I'm going to say git clone. I'm going to clone the repository. This only works if you have an SSH key set up. But basically now I have the skills here, and I can open something like Thunar, my file manager here. I can go into skills, and then I can go and take the skill creator, copy. I can go back. I can go to test project, Claude, skills, and then I can just paste it here. Now I have the skill creator skill. And if I now go into my directory and I say Claude, then I can say create a new agent skill. As a result of this, it's going to recognize that there is a skill called skill creator. It's going to load this one. Notice it did not load the Python package installation skill, only the one it needed. And then it asks some questions like, what should the skill be able to do? And then I could say something like, it should tell the agent how to properly print, or how to properly print stuff in Python code. Always start a print string with, I don't know, XYZ. This is like completely random right now. I'm just showing you the process because this is something that you can actually notice when it's being used. So it's going to ask me if it's allowed to write it. So it goes here and creates Python print as a skill. I can allow that. It's going to write the SKILL.md file itself. There you go. It gives me some examples here. It shows that this is not correct. This one is correct. XYZ is what you want to use here. Create that SKILL.md file, and then that's basically it. Now, it can also do stuff like evaluations. It can also do stuff like additional scripts and all that. We're going to ignore this for now for the sake of simplicity. But I can start a new instance now, and I can say, give me a Python script that prints hello world. Now I misspelled world here, but that should not be a problem. It should hopefully, I'm not sure if it's going to do that, but it should hopefully recognize that there's a skill for printing. Okay, in this case, it doesn't recognize that. So I'm still going to accept this, or actually I'm going to abort this, and I'm going to try to force the skill usage here. So I'm going to say / Python print. Oh, actually, not like this. Let me start a new session again. There you go, / Python print. And then I'm going to say, write a hello world Python script. And now I'm forcing it to use that skill. Basically, I'm forcing the context to be there. It doesn't have to recognize the skill first. And hopefully now it's going to say XYZ hello world. There you go, XYZ hello world. So yeah, this is probably not the best skill to be automatically detected. It's not very specific, but I want to show you one more example. I want to show you a LangChain skill, which actually has a use case. So the idea is the following. I'm going to create here a directory or a skill in Claude skills, and I'm going to call this LangChain docs. So I'm going to say LangChain-docs. And in here, of course, I'm going to create a SKILL.md SKILLS.md file. Now I'm going to copy paste this because it doesn't make sense to type it out manually here, but it's a very, very basic skill. It just says looking up LangChain documentation whenever writing LangChain code. This is important because LangChain oftentimes changes how it's doing things. And especially 1 year ago or something, you were using LangGraph to create React agents and all that. Now we're just using LangChain.agent and then create agent. That is the new way to do it in LangChain 1.0, I think. And basically this skill just says this page is where the LangChain docs are located, link to the docs. Then whenever a user asks you to write something using LangChain, check the latest docs first. Never ever try to code from memory. LangChain changes its API very often. Code from 1 month ago might already be outdated. Always rely on the docs. Check how the thing you're trying to do is done and in the latest docs today. And then for this, use a maximum of 5 web searches because otherwise it can drift off into an endless web search and or fetches, and then not more, then get to coding. And make sure to trust the docs, not what you think. So a very specific skill here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a second test directory. So I'm going to say make directory test project 2. So let's run UV init here as well. And actually I'm going to use Claude Code because even though I said I'm going to use open code, I think the open code models that I have access to are all new enough to not make the mistake. So let's try to do Claude here. Let's say create a basic LangChain agent that can use 1 or 2 tools and keep track of message history and context. And there you go. You can see what it does here is it says from langgraph.prebuild create React agent. So this is outdated. Nowadays we do from langchain.agents import and then create agent. This is the old way of doing things. And it exactly did that. So this is what I wanted to show you here without the skill. Now, I'm not sure if it's going to be able to do that in Claude Code with the skill because Claude Code has some issues or had some issues with web search, but we're going to try it. So let's go back to test project 1 where we do have the skill. Now let's remove actually, what do we want to remove? We want to remove the pipe project, want to remove the UV log, want to remove the requirements txt file. Want to remove the main py file. There you go. And now I'm going to say Claude. And I'm going to use the same prompt here. So create a basic LangChain agent that can use 1 to 2 tools, keep track of message history and context. And hopefully now it sees my LangChain doc skill. There you go. It knows what to do and it will start doing web search before writing code. So I have to give it permission to fetch content from the internet. Here it wants to look up something else. I'm just going to block this now because it's too long. I will say implement. Now you can see it also loaded the Python package installation skill because it now needs to add stuff here. Although I think it will fail because it's still, and it also needs to init again because I deleted the file. But I think it will fail because it still uses LangGraph. But this is what I meant. Claude Code doesn't handle this stuff very well. I can show you in open code that it actually works. But there you go. If you look at this, it still uses create React agent. So it did use the skill, but Claude Code doesn't handle this fetching very well. I'm not sure why. But if I do the same thing now in open code, so if I remove I'm going to remove PyProject again. I'm going to remove requirements, UV log, and also main. And I'm going to do UV init again. Now if I open this in open code, even with a not so smart model as Opus, it will be able to do that by using the skill as well. So if I go here to switch model, Minimax, it failed it at least once. So I know that it actually doesn't work all the time without a skill, but sometimes it succeeds. But let's go and say the same prompt here. So there you go, create a basic LangChain agent and so on. There you go, now you can see here it loaded the skill LangChain docs. And now you can also see it does web search, LangChain, create agent and all that. And it uses not the thing that I wanted to use, but it uses a more modern approach. So it uses the create tool calling agent from LangChain agents. I think this is not the example from the tutorial from the quick start guide, but I think it's up to date because it only uses the core LangChain. And now it also loads the second skill for the Python package installation. So although this is not a perfect example, these are very baby examples just to show you how it works. This is what you can do essentially with skills. You can create directories that describe certain processes, and when the agent thinks it has to do this process, it will use the skill to get more context about this, so you don't have to every time say, hey, do the migration, but keep in mind that we're doing this in a Docker container, so do the migration in a Docker container or whatever. Like, you don't want to have to specify this every single time. You also don't want to blow up the size of your agents.md file. This is what skills are for. Now, finally, I want to show you there is more to learn about. There is this code.claude.com/docs and then skills section, basically, where you can see more stuff that you can do with skills. On the one hand, you have like header stuff that you can include here. Not sure where exactly it is, but you have stuff like allow tools or disable model invocation, which you can put in the header section, which is always going to be loaded by the agent. So that's useful. And you also get stuff here like placeholders and substitutions, basically. So you have here $arguments, you have Claude session ID. So there's more stuff that you can do with that, but we're not going to get into this for this video today. So that's it for this video today. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting a like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. Also, in case you're interested, on my website, you will find a services tab and a tutoring tab. There you can contact me if you need help with a project, if you need a freelancer, if you need consulting, or if you want one-on-one tutoring, you can contact me via email or LinkedIn at the bottom of both pages. Besides that, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you much for watching, see you in the next video, and